Hello, colleagues. My name is Eric Montoya, and I'm majoring
Well,
in
the
media
sign says that
entrepreneurship.
it's 4 quarters for an hour, but a quarter only gets you 15 minutes. So if my math is correct, that's not an hour.
That's not an hour,
Not an hour.
but it is. And also,
Okay, we're going to be creating a pivot table within Excel and also a pivot chart using the pivot table. So, using the Airbnb Watch DC worksheet, we're going to select all of our data, and by doing that, we're going to left click on the small triangle next to the A and above the 1. After doing that, it'll highlight all of your data. After doing that, we're going to left click on the Insert tab, and at the far left, you're going to left click on Pivot Table. After that, you're presented with a menu, and it'll ask you to select the range. We've already done that by highlighting our information, and also asking you whether an existing worksheet or new worksheet, but we're going to create a new worksheet. After doing that, we have a new worksheet within Excel, and we have a pivot table field menu on your right side. So to start creating the pivot table, we have to select values, rows, and columns. So first, we're going to scroll down, and we're going to select left click and hold and drag it into the columns box, and that for our columns. So now we have room types as columns. And so now we're also going to look for our rows. We're going to go to neighborhood, left click, hold, and drag it and drop it into rows. So now we have a pivot table with our rows and our columns, but with no data. To fill it with data, we're going to go to price. We're going to left click, hold, and drag it and drop it into values. After doing that, we now have data within our pivot table. As you can see, it's actually the sum of price, and we can actually do various calculations, and we want to set it to average. So now we're going to click on the small triangle next to sum of price within the value field. Click on value field settings, and after doing that, change it from sum to average. Left click on it, and we're also going to go ahead and change the number format since we're dealing with prices. Left click, go to number, and also we're going to change it to 2 decimal places to account for cents. Click OK, and so now we can see that within our pivot table we actually have the average of price, and we also have decimal places. So now we're going to add a filter so we can filter out unnecessary neighborhoods. So we're going to left click, hold, and drag reviews per month and drop it in the filters box. As you can see, it did not affect our pivot table yet because we still have to edit our filter. And by doing that, we're going to click on the small triangle next to reviews per month, go to field settings, we're going to go to cell B1, and we're going to click on the drop down box, select multiple items, select all, and we're just going to select neighborhoods that have 10 reviews or more, and so that's at the very bottom. Click OK. So now our pivot table became smaller. So now what we're going to do is click on any cell within pivot table and create a pivot chart. Go to pivot table tools, click on the analyze tab, and on the far right you'll see pivot chart option. You'll left click on it, and we can create various charts, but we're going to do a bar chart, and we're going to select clustered bar. And actually, before selecting, you can actually see a preview of the information. So you click on it, clustered bar, left click OK. So now you see that you have a pivot chart right on top of your pivot table, and you can drag it, drop it anywhere, make it longer, make it bigger. Right now we're going to just put it right under our pivot table, and as you can see, it displays the information within the pivot table, and whatever you modify within the pivot table you'll see live changes within the pivot chart. Vice versa, if you change anything within the private pivot chart, it'll change within the pivot table. So for example, if I decided to include every neighborhood, then my pivot chart would also change and display the same thing with all the neighborhoods. Vice versa, if I went to my filter within the pivot chart and just selected went back to just 10 or more reviews, then it'll select and it'll just change the pivot table and the pivot chart together. So no need to go back and forth. And so that's it for today on how to create a pivot chart and a pivot table within Excel. And thank you for watching. Okay, we're going to be creating a pivot table.